Hey everybody, Lewis here. Today I'm here with a new series that I'm going to be working on, focusing on some of the most competitive congressional races across the country. These could be US House seats, these could be Senate seats, and I may throw in a couple governor's races as well, depending on how things go. This week we're going to start off with a race in Pennsylvania that's been getting quite a bit of attention so far. It's a Senate seat currently held by Senator Pat Toomey. The two in the race right now that I'm sure you've heard of in the last couple days based on some viral videos that went out, which we'll definitely be talking briefly about, is going to be between Democrat John Fetterman and Republican Dr. Oz. Now, to start this off, we're going to talk a little bit about the primary races on both sides, just because they were very contested, and they generated a lot of news and a lot of money in particular. Money is definitely something we're going to be looking into in this series and focusing on, because it's a little bit harder to kind of dive deep into fundraising numbers and all that sort of stuff for regular folks. So rather than focusing on each of these candidates' policies and things like that, we're going to try to focus more on fundraising and some of the bigger picture things that are a little bit, more into the nitty-gritty for folks to have a better understanding of what's going on in the race. Before I get into the specifics of this race, I want to talk about the importance of primaries in general at this point. As I'm sure you've noticed, the United States is becoming more and more gerrymandered every year. As states that are primarily controlled by one party or another essentially go through every decade or so and redraw district lines, they're drawing them more and more so that they have a safe number of seats for one party and the other. For example, where I live here in Texas, the maps are getting crazier and crazier by the year. Take a look at the Texas 35 district, for example, which is drawn in the most bizarre fashion possible. I mean, there's literally a stretch there where it hovers along I-35 that's less than a half a mile wide to connect the east side of Austin to the east side of San Antonio. Now, these are entirely two different cities with different communities and different needs that should be represented by different congressional candidates, but I digress. This isn't just happening in Texas, it's happening across the country. So the primaries are more important now because when you get to the general election, when you draw maps specifically to favor one party or another, you're going to end up with a landslide victory one way or the other in a lot of these races. Okay, back specifically to this race in Pennsylvania. We're going to start off on the Democratic side, breaking down the primary campaign for John Fetterman, where he was predominantly running against Connor Lamb. Connor Lamb is a very normie, moderate Democrat in this case, whereas John Fetterman is more progressive. Now, a lot of PAC money was dumped into this race specifically to back Connor Lamb, but ultimately it ended up not mattering, with John Fetterman ending up with 58% of the vote in a three-way race. Another thing to note with Fetterman in the primary is that he was actually backed by a super PAC as well. A cryptocurrency-based super PAC actually dumped $200,000 worth of ads just ahead of the primary election. When the Fetterman campaign was asked about this, they said that it doesn't change their stance, that they think super PACs are bad for politics in general, and that they don't support them moving forward. Now, what's extra crazy about this is literally just days before the election, John Fetterman literally had a stroke, and thankfully he's doing fine today, but days before the election, the man has a stroke and still wins the election handily. Now, we're going to talk more about the stroke later because it's starting to come back into effect as Fetterman is out campaigning again. But for now, I mean, that was a crazy feat to be able to win the election right after having a stroke. That's similar to, Bernie having a heart attack on the campaign trail when he was running for president and still doing very well despite not winning in the end. Now, on the Republican side, we had Dr. Oz versus his main competitor being Dave McCormick. This race was an absolute bloodbath. There was negative attack ads on both sides, and it garnered a lot of attention. In particular, one thing that Dave McCormick did that drew some criticism was tried to tie some of Dr. Oz's past history of actually living and serving in the Turkish military. Now, to be clear, Dr. Oz was born in the United States. He is an American citizen, but he does have dual citizenship with Turkey. He has said that if he were to win the election, he would get rid of his Turkish citizenship just to eliminate any potential issues or things like that. But still, it is something that the McCormick campaign leaned into heavily. At one point in his life, Dr. Oz actually served in the Turkish military, and Dave McCormick ran an ad specifically attacking that part of his life.
I like Trump.
I love Trump.
But not his Senate pick.
Trump made a mistake on this one.
Mehmet Oz is not a conservative.
Oz is totally wrong on guns.
Pro-China.
Oz called Fauci a great leader.
He even praised Hillary.
He was in the Turkish army, for crying out loud.
Now, you'll note in the beginning of that ad, they talk about an endorsement from Trump. Donald Trump did get involved in this race, as you probably just figured out by watching that, but Donald Trump actually did get out and back Dr. Oz in this race. Did it have an impact? It's hard to say. This race was extremely, extremely close, with Dr. Oz winning by less than 1,000 votes in a statewide primary. Again, that's massive, less than 1,000 votes in a statewide primary. Now, in the fashion of anyone who is endorsed by President Donald Trump, Dr. Oz took a page out of his book and declared victory before the recount was complete. Ultimately, it didn't end up mattering, as Dr. Oz did win the race after the recount. Dave McCormick gave him a call, conceded the race, and that was that. So with that has left us with the final matchup between, on the Democratic side, John Fetterman, and on the Republican side, Dr. Oz. Before we get into some of the specifics on fundraising and things like that, I want to talk a little bit about what's been making news the last couple days. John Fetterman in general is he kind of comes off as the everyman, right? He's out there, he's wearing a basketball shorts and a hoodie, and in general is kind of like the definition of authentic when it comes to political candidates. Now, Dr. Oz, for whatever weird reason, is trying to compete with John Fetterman in that lane, which is very difficult for him to do, apparently, as we've seen with the now infamous Wegner's video.
Thought I'd do some grocery shopping. I'm at Wegner's, and my wife wants some vegetables for crudité, right? So here's a broccoli. That's $2. Not a ton of broccoli there. There's some asparagus. That's $4. Yep. Carrots. That's $4 more. That's $10 of vegetables there. And then we need some guacamole. That's $4 more. And she loves salsa. Yeah, there's salsa there. $6. Must be a shortage of salsa. Guys, that's $20 for crudité, and this doesn't include the tequila. I mean, that's outrageous. And we got Joe Biden to thank for this.
Crudité. I mean, I literally had to look up what crudité was. It's literally a freaking veggie tray, okay? A veggie tray. And I don't know anyone who eats asparagus with salsa and guacamole on a veggie tray, let alone follows up their veggie tray with tequila, but apparently this was Dr. Oz's attempt at being relatable. I don't know who the hell is helping him out with his social media, but they must really not like Dr. Oz. Essentially he's just trying to come off as being authentic, when in reality, Dr. Oz has been extremely wealthy for most of his life and probably has no idea what it's like to be a regular Pennsylvanian. The other major thing that John Fetterman has been hitting Dr. Oz on is that he really has not lived in Pennsylvania for much of his life. He did go to college in Pennsylvania, but predominantly he's lived in New Jersey. John Fetterman's gone as far as to go out and find Snooki, made famous by Jersey Shore.
Hey, Maymette, this is Nicole Snooki. And I'm from Jersey Shore. I don't know if you've seen of it before. But I'm a hot mess on a reality show, basically, and I enjoy life. But I heard that you moved from New Jersey to Pennsylvania to look for a new job. And personally, I don't know why anyone would want to leave Jersey, because it's like the best place ever, and we're all hot messes. But I want to say best of luck to you. I know you're away from home and you're in a new place, but Jersey will not forget you. I just want to let you know I will not forget you. And don't worry, because you'll be back home in Jersey soon. This is only temporary. So good luck. You got this, and Jersey loves you. Mwah.
He's doing lots of fun things like this on the internet, trying to troll Dr. Oz at any chance he can get. All right, now let's start to move on to some of the more serious stuff here. I want to talk about fundraising. Now, fundraising kind of falls into a couple different categories, right? You've got the actual campaigns themselves, which are much more transparent and you can see a lot more information. And then you've got PACs and super PACs involved as well. So just starting with individual donations, the Fetterman campaign, up to their last disclosure, they announced that they had raised over $26 million. Now, that is compared to Dr. Oz's money raised, which was just over $19 million. Now, in the case of Dr. Oz, raised might not be the right word, because somewhere just over $14 million was actually either him contributing his own money into the campaign or loaning himself the money. We'll get into where Dr. Oz has gotten all of his money in a bit. Now, looking right back at John Fetterman, when we actually break down some of the donations that were actually made to his campaign, just about 55% of the donations to the campaign of the $26 million were made by small dollar donors, all giving $200 or less to the campaign. When we compare that to Dr. Oz, it's only 4% of donors making small dollar donations. Again, that makes a lot of sense when you think about Dr. Oz actually chipping in 75% of the campaign money is literally his own or him loaning himself money to the campaign. When we look at PAC money and things like that, both candidates are accepting PAC money to their actual campaigns. John Fetterman has stated that he is not going to take any corporate PAC money, but that he'll take PAC money from, essentially groups such as unions and things like that can create PACs and other similar organizations to donate money to campaigns. In this election, it actually does look like Fetterman has received a lot of money from some of these unions and things like that, which makes a lot of sense with his pro-union stance on just about everything. Like I mentioned before, he's very much a regular guy and is very much an avid supporter of the labor movement in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. Now, when we go back and look at the 2018 campaign for lieutenant governor that John Fetterman ran in, he did accept PAC money, and a sizable amount. He accepted $1.5 million from the Fairness PA PAC. Now, the Fairness PA PAC is made up of all sorts of different donors. However, some of the largest are folks from the Perlman family. The Perlman family is the definition of old money. The father figure and the grandfather in the family, I looked back as far as 1961, and they made most of their money by buying and selling corporations. Some of it was totally legit, some of it was shady at best, but it's definitely money coming from corporations or from a family that's a billionaire status that has made all of their money in and out of corporations. Not the greatest look if you're John Fetterman in that case, but again, to his credit, in the digging that I've done so far, it doesn't look like he's accepting, oil and gas money or anything like that, or any other PAC money that is definitely corporate related in this 22 race. However, it didn't stop him in the past back in 2018 when he was running for lieutenant governor. One other thing to note with this Fairness PA PAC is, and both with this Perlman family as well as some of the other largest donors in this PAC in general, is that all of these folks are very pro-Israel. Now, the only reason I bring that up is, again, John Fetterman is kind of being run as this progressive hero, especially on the left, but a lot of those folks will likely be a bit disappointed with his stance on Israel. He's kind of affirmed this in a couple instances and has been working closely with lots of pro-Israel groups, hosting fundraisers and things like that in the past. I only bring this up and the donations from the PAC in 2018 just to give you an idea that, while he comes off as very squeaky clean right now, there are some things in his past, just like with most politicians, where he was accepting money from places that were less than clear about where things were coming from. Now, let's move back over to Dr. Oz. Like I mentioned, I was going to explain where Dr. Oz made some of his money. Now, obviously, he's done well for himself, as many of you have probably seen him on TV before. I remember growing up seeing him on the Oprah Winfrey Show all the time. He's got his own show, so he's definitely done well for himself on his own, but not nearly as well as the family that he married into. The family that he married into runs Asplund Tree Experts. Now, you're probably wondering, like I was when I found this, why would a tree trimming company, be a big deal? Why would they be making tons of money? This is a nationwide tree business that literally has billions of dollars in revenue and is the 99th largest private company in the entire country. In the entire country. This is a massive, massive operation that's been in business for about 100 years. Now, Asplund Tree Experts, they do standard residential tree trimming, that sort of thing, but they make a lot of their money dealing with big projects, such as working with departments of transportation, local governments, cities, things like that, doing jobs like trimming trees along the sides of highways, power lines, and all sorts of, related topics like that. So they're definitely relying heavily on big contracts, in a lot of cases with the government. Not saying that there's necessarily going to be a tie there one way or the other, but when we're talking a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and them giving lots of money, which I'll get into in a second, to a Senate member, there's potentially some room for lines to be drawn. So when we do look at that, the family has given to Dr. Oz's campaign directly. However, the numbers are much larger when you look at the super PAC that has been set up to support Dr. Oz. Now, this super PAC set up to support Dr. Oz is set up in a very similar way to the super PAC that was set up to support President Donald Trump during both the 2016 and 2020 elections. The way that this works is essentially you have the super PAC, and then you have another entity that's a nonprofit, and through some legal shenanigans and whatnot, you're able to pass money from one entity to the other, essentially like cleaning the money in a legal way. There's an article from the Daily Beast that I read about this if you're interested in learning more. I'm not going to get into all of the nitty-gritty details right here, but I'll make sure that the Daily Beast article is linked below. So anyway, the father-in-law to Dr. Oz contributed $1.5 million to this PAC. Dr. Oz's sister-in-law, who is also married into the DuPont family, which is another massive billionaire family who started the DuPont Corporation. She's donated over $70,000 to this PAC, and several others throughout the family, all donating to this super PAC. Now, the PAC itself can't be directly tied to Dr. Oz. However, they are, running ads and things like that, very pro Dr. Oz, and they're accepting all of this money directly from his family. So you can put two and two together and figure out that while there might not be direct communication, it's probably pretty damn close. Now, going beyond some of that stuff, there's also PACs being run by essentially the Senate Democrats and the Senate Republicans that are on top of all of this other money being spent, each chipping in roughly $30 million more each to this race in Pennsylvania. So if you live in Pennsylvania, you've already had plenty of ads like we showed some before and during the primaries, but a lot more ads and all sorts of other stuff is headed your way. So be ready for it. Now, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because polling is talked about by everybody and their brother, but it is important to look at, but it's just a snapshot as to what's happening right now. So when you take a look at the 538 average of polling for this race, John Fetterman is up by 10 points. 10 points in a seat that's been held by a Republican for a really long time. Now, this should be a major red flag to Republicans, but I don't think that this is necessarily a done deal. Now, number one, with all of the money being dropped into this race on both sides, a lot can happen. But again, I want to talk again about John Fetterman's stroke. Now, just earlier this week, John Fetterman had his first event back on the campaign trail where he had about a 10-minute speech. Now, I watched the speech in its entirety, and you can tell this is a guy who is still recovering. He is not nearly as sharp or ready to go as he was before this stroke a couple months ago at this point. You don't want to think that that's going to be the only factor that someone decides into this, but it doesn't look great, right? When you're going to make your decision for someone who's going to be your senator, talking is a big part about being a senator, and if he's having a hard time doing it, it's going to be tough. Now, something Dr. Oz is doing to kind of push buttons at this is Dr. Oz is pushing heavy to have debates, like a lot of debates. Dr. Oz at this point has said he'll agree to doing 5 televised debates and is challenging John Fetterman to accept invitations. Right now, Fetterman, in my opinion, would probably have a hard time doing a debate just based on being able to talk clearly through it. I'm no expert on strokes or anything like that. I don't know how long these sorts of effects are going to last. I'm sure that he, in his head, has everything all there, but when he's talking, it's a little bit hard to listen to. I'll play a short clip of it right now.
And you can count on us to eliminate the filibuster if you come out and step with us. We will be able to stand with you in D.C. I gave away the lieutenant governor in Pennsylvania, the only lieutenant governor in the history to do that. And let's get some stuff done for America. Who would ever think that I would be the normal one in the race here, with that?
Now, obviously, that was cut to show some of the worst moments of the speech, but I'll be honest, it's not like it's anything beyond what actually happened. Again, those are the worst moments, but if you watch the whole speech, which I encourage you to do, it's about 10 minutes long, there were moments where he was really struggling through it. Setting the stroke aside, there's still plenty of time left in this race. We could see John Fetterman with a quick recovery, slowly getting back onto his feet, and actually ready to debate Dr. Oz, let's say, if he pushes these debates back until October or so, which would be the month leading up to the election. There's still plenty of time for Fetterman's speech to improve. There's also still plenty of time for Dr. Oz to have more weird gaffes on the campaign trail, a more crudité moments, if you will. But ultimately, we'll see where it goes. All right, so that's it. That's the wrap up of this race in Pennsylvania. Please let me know if there's anything else that you would have liked to hear in this video. whether it relate to a specific topic, policies, fundraising, whatever it may be, please let me know. I'm going to be doing these every week or two as we lead right up until the November elections. If there are any races in particular that you'd like me to do a breakdown of, please, again, leave them in the comments below, or you can send me a message on Twitter. I'm at LewisD217. You can follow me there, send a direct message, tweet me if you'd like to see a specific race broken down. Otherwise, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.